Hey, good evening, class. This is Mr. Damiani. We're looking at lesson 5.3 in our big book. The central question for today's lesson is how can you write fractions and decimals as percents? So let's look at our first set of directions here. Write the fraction or decimal as a percent. Question 1, you'll notice, is already partially filled in. It's a little bit guided, but you'll notice here where we have our fraction that is given, which ends up down here as 3 over 25, and then this side over here, you'll notice, is a value over 100. Anytime we're looking for a percent, we are looking for a number out of 100. So in the example 1 here, we're applying an equivalent fraction rule here. We know 25 goes into 100 4 times, so we're going to apply 25 times 4. 3 times 4, because whatever you do on the bottom, you have to do on the top. That's going to give us 12 out of 100, and a percent of 12%. Any value out of 100 is a percent. Looking at example 2, we're going to start by writing our fraction, 3 over 10. I'm going to set it equal to a value that we want to get out of 100. Again, applying the equivalent fraction rule, we know that 10 times 10 gets us 100, 3 times 10 gets us 30, and we get a final answer of 30%. Okay, so when we're looking at changing a fraction into a percent, we want to look at trying to get that fraction to its equivalent version over 100. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at a decimal equivalent to a percent. Now, if you remember back to lesson 5.2, if we are going from a percent to a decimal, we definitely divide it by 100. So now if we're going to go in the opposite direction, we are now going to go from a decimal back to a percent. We are going to use the opposite operation of division, which is multiplication. So I'm going to take my value of 0.717, I'm going to multiply it by 100, which is going to bounce my decimal place 2 spaces to the right, and I'm looking at 71.7%. Please go ahead, pause the video, and complete question 4 on your own. Okay, thank you for pausing the video and completing question 4. Again, we're going from a decimal to a percent, so I'm going to take 0.02 times 100, which is going to equal a value 2 spaces to the right, which will be a full 2, so I'm looking at 2%. Alright, moving down below here, questions 5 through 8. Write the number in 2 other forms, fraction, decimal, or percent. So in this, if we're given a decimal like we are in example 5 here, then I'm going to want to find the fraction and the percent equivalent of that. So I'm starting with 9/10 as a decimal version, and hopefully using our place value here, we'll notice that 9/10 is also written as 9 over 10. And if we want to write that as a percent, I have an option here. I can go from my decimal version, so I can go 0.9 times 100, bounce my decimal place 2 spaces to the right, and get my 90%. That was one option. Another option would have been, I could take that fraction version of 9 over 10, and I could find its equivalent over 100. Times 10 times 10 gives me that 90% as well. Okay. Let's move on to example 6 here. I would like you to go ahead and change example 6 into, since it is a fraction, then I would like you to write the decimal version of that and then find the percent. Go ahead and pause the video and take care of that. Okay, thanks for pausing the video. If I'm going to take and change 3/8 into a decimal, what I'm actually going to do in my calculator is take 3 and divide it by 8. When I get that into the calculator, I'm going to notice that I get an answer of 0.375. and that is my decimal version. Now, if I want to take that and change it into a percent, I would go ahead and multiply it by 100, which would bounce my decimal place 2 spaces to the right, and I would be left with 37.5%. Now, on your own, I would like you to go ahead and complete 7 and 8. Go ahead and pause the video, and I'll be sharing the answers. Okay, thank you for pausing the video. When I look at question 7, I see 45 hundredths as a decimal version, so I have to write the fraction and the percent. The reduced fraction version is 9/20ths, and the percent is 45%. As for number 8, I'm looking at a fraction, so I want to write the decimal version, which would be 0.3. Sorry about that. 125, and then the percent would simply be 31.25%. Okay, moving on to questions 9 through 12. Here our directions say write the fraction or decimal as a percent, and I would like to go ahead and take care of question 9 in this part, and question 12. Those would be the two that we're going to look at here. So I have a fraction version, 7/50ths. If I'm going to write this as a percent, I'm going to start with my 7/50. I know I got to get a value out of 100, so I'm going to actually just equivalent fraction rule. Times 2 times 2 gives me a 14 out of 100, 14%. Moving over to question 12 here. I have a decimal version. Anytime I want to take a decimal and I want to change that into a percent, I am going to multiply by 100. So right now in the back of my mind, I notice I have a whole and a part, so I should have a percent greater than 100. 1.25 times 100 is going to equal 2 spaces to the right, 125%. If you want to complete questions 10 and 11 on your own, go ahead and pause the video, and I will share the answers. Okay, thanks for coming back. These would be 80% and 90.2%. Alright, next set of directions. Write the number in two other forms, fractions, decimal, and percents. I would like you to go ahead and pick any two that you would like. Your choice. So I would either go 13 or 14, and then 15 or 16, so you get at least one fraction and one decimal conversion. Go ahead and pause the video, pick your two, and I'll share the answers in a second. Okay, thank you for pausing the video. The answers for question 13 as a fraction was 1/100th, and then as a percent was 1%. Question 14 as a decimal was 0.325. As a percent, it was 32.5%. Question 15, I noticed, is an improper fraction, so we're actually going to have a whole and a part. It's a top-heavy fraction, so I'm going to end up with a percent greater than 100. When I look at this, I'll notice that my decimal version is 1.2, and my percent is 120%. Question 16, decimal, I have to write the fraction and the percent equivalent, and I'm looking at 1 out of 125 and 0.8%. Now, you'll notice these answers, the fractions are reduced, so we definitely had to reduce the answers to match up our fractions, but the directions do not state that they have to be reduced. So remember, if the directions don't say you have to simplify, then you do not have to simplify. So always read those directions carefully, because we definitely don't want to make more work for ourselves than we have to. Thanks for your participation in today's online lesson. I look forward to seeing everybody in class tomorrow morning, and we'll be able to work out any questions you have. Thank you, and have a good night.